as Minneapolis burned, Jacob Frey, the mayor, says he's on record. Like, I kept calling the guy. He said he'd send help. The National Guard never came. A police precinct burned down. And once again, it appears Tim Walz did not answer the 3 a.m. phone call very effectively, Drew.
Yeah, that's unfortunately right, Megyn. I mean, it's interesting to me because in a normal universe, I think this would be a really valuable role for the mainstream media to play to fact check these sorts of things, right? As you mentioned, the comments from the mayor are on the record. You could very easily go back and look and say, hey, this guy who's now been nominated for vice president, he doesn't actually pass muster on a lot of these things he said. And instead, we have a media who's focused on his vibes, right? He's passed the vibe check. And so somehow it's no longer interesting what he had done before, and whether or not what he had done before is actually consistent with what he's saying now. And I think we're seeing, unfortunately, that what the perception that he is holding up of himself and the truth are very much.
No, sorry, our connection is a little wobbly there. Let me ask you, Stephen, because the mayor of Minneapolis at the time, Jacob Frey, is all over the record on just how bad he thought Governor Walz did in handling this nightmare and deploying the National Guard. And we've put together a soundbite of some of that from the time. Listen.
At 6:28 Wednesday afternoon, Mayor Jacob Frey's communication director, Michael Vlatkovich, will text a small circle of advisors. Mayor just came out and said the chief wants him to call in the National Guard for help at 3rd Precinct. Mayor appears intent on doing. Word on the ground is it's really crazy and escalating, texted back a senior advisor. But a couple hours later, at 8:08, Vlatkovich will relay a message from the mayor. Quote, he said Walz was hesitating.
This was a guard-sized crisis and demanded a guard-sized response.
Do you feel like the National Guard was slow-walked into Minneapolis for whatever reason?
I recognize that they're coming from all around the state. Pretty much when the very first window broke on a private business, I called the governor and I asked for the National Guard.
But state officials have said the city had no detailed plan for the National Guard. And the state argued the National Guard was a poor choice anyway to handle civil unrest. But the next morning, Thursday at 10:55 a.m., Mayor Frey sends a formal request for the Minnesota National Guard. But the Guard was never a major presence in Minneapolis that night. By 9:36 that night, the 3rd Precinct was surrounded by fire and chaos. Mayor Frey will text Chief Arredondo, calling the governor regarding 3rd Precinct now. Arredondo, precinct being evacuated now. Protesters breaching the precinct now. And finally, all officers evacuated. By Friday afternoon, the city's still smoldering. The Guard was all in. A senior aide sends a text. Main update from state is that they are mobilizing the entire Guard and that this has switched from a protest to intentional destruction.
Little late to the party. That was a Fox 9 report with an interview with the mayor. Go ahead, Stephen.
Fire, but mostly peaceful governor, it would seem. I mean, I guess my thing for the mayor is, did kneeling not work to help this stuff? Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's tough following that veteran's story in his service. But basically, I look at this and say, was Bo Bergdahl busy? Can he not join this ticket? Because it looks like Kamala Harris picked the most radical person and governor she could east of Gavin Newsom. And so Drew kind of touched on that this election's going to be about who Donald Trump is and who Kamala Harris and Tim Walz pretend to be. And they're going to have an entire media infrastructure behind them who's just going to basically not push them for interviews, not push them to answer for record, not push to answer why Tim Walz's wife thought smelling fires and burning bodies was a good thing or anything like that. And
Another text snafu. Sorry, guys, we're having troubles. But while we're waiting, I'll play that soundbite that Stephen just referenced. Gwen Walz is the wife of Tim Walz, and in 2020, she gave an interview about what she was experiencing during the George Floyd riots. Take a listen.
I would say those first days, when there were riots, I could smell the burning tires, and that was a very real thing. And I kept the windows open for as long as I could because I felt like that was such a touchstone of what was happening.
I don't know what does that mean, Stephen? She needed to smell the burning tires in order to feel connected to the rioters?
I guess she needed to remember what burning small businesses down, smelled like. And this is something that he's going to have to answer for, because you have Kamala Harris out here saying, we're not going back. We're not going back. Well, apparently she wants to take us back to the summer of 2020. And so I guess the good news or the bad news for us is if Trump wins, we're going to get riots. And if Kamala wins, we're going to get riots. And it's going to be from the same exact people on both sides, on that side.
You know what struck me is listening to Jacob Fry in that report from Fox 9 on the number of times the mayor was asking for help and didn't get the help. You had Tim Walz come out and speak to this at the time about why he wasn't more responsive. I mean, this was obviously a very big deal. This is not just a 2024 retroactive story. And listen to how he described it.
The mayor knew what he was asking for. He wanted the National Guard. And what does that mean? I think to the mayor, yes, I think it's a perception. I'm certainly not questioning that. I think the mayor said, I request the National Guard. Whew, I'm out. This is great. We're going to have massively trained troops. No, you're going to have 19-year-olds who are cooks.
So,
but remember, his
insulting
service
the National
was
Guard
great.
for good measure.
Yeah, remember, his service was impeccable and there's no blemishes, but here he is insulting 19-year-old National Guardsmen who apparently can't handle the job that he says he handled perfectly in his service. I mean, we're 90 days out of this election, and Kamala and this guy's problem is neither of them have been through a strong primary. And so the book hasn't even been opened on her yet. And now you have this guy where there's going to be dozens and dozens of sound clips back there where he's calling socialism neighborly and things like that. And
that just happened. That was on the White Guys for Kamala Zoom.
Yeah, it was on, it was like on MSNBC or something like that. So Drew hit this right, that they have to run this vibe election and joy and things great, and he's our uncle and everything, just as they have to run Kamala, not on her record. And so what's interesting to me about her picking this guy is she spent the last 2 weeks walking back some of these policy proposals of hers, and now she just put a guy on the ticket that believes all of them. And so now she's back to snapping back to having to defend this stuff. Right. And so, putting all of your chips in a debate, Kamala Harris's hubris with "come and debate me, coward," is astounding given what happened to Joe Biden in a debate and what happened to Kamala Harris against Tulsi Gabbard. And so they really are writing this kind of razor thin Lady Obama type narrative. The problem is we're not coming off of 8 years of Republican president. We're coming off of 4 years of Joe Biden.
The ability to provide for your family has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years, as you know. When you go shopping, you're getting less, but spending the same. You might have to decide what to buy and what to do without. But I want to tell you about American Financing. If you are a homeowner, they will take the equity you've built up and use it to pay off your high interest debt. They are saving customers an average of $854 a month, and they're closing some people in as fast as 10 days. Start today, and you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing to see what they could do for you. The number is 888-528-1219, 888-528-1219, or go to americanfinancing.net/Kelly. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.